Anime is able to transport us into worlds beyond our imagination. Fantastical places in which we can forget about our grey everyday life and sink into an otherworldly place with exciting stories and never-ending adventures. And as much as Makoto Shinkai's films are able to do exactly that, transporting us into other worlds, telling us stories about time traveling, weather gods and mystical beasts, his new film Suzume is not one of those films. Okay, that might be hard to understand at first sight. Our protagonist Suzume meets a mysterious man that gets turned into a chair, accidentally opens up the portal for mystical creatures who try to destroy Japan, and has to fight an antagonistic force in form of an evil-speaking cat. And if you now think, wait a minute, a cursed man with long black hair, a door that can transport you to other places, deadly creatures that have a black and red-like shape? Yes, all of this sounds like Hayao Miyazaki. This will probably not be the last time that Makoto Shinkai is compared to the godfather of anime. Okay, all jokes aside, Suzume still feels like a Makoto Shinkai film. If you have seen his latest two works, Your Name and Weathering with You, you will immediately feel at home in the world of Suzume, the countryside of Kyushu in which Suzume lives, but every other set piece the film visits is breathtakingly animated. Lush colors are filling the screen. The way hair moves, rain falls, sun reflects, all of this looks simply phenomenal and familiar at the same time. There's an immense love for details, especially when the film just pauses for a second to soak in the beautiful scenery, and you are able to see how meticulously crafted the landscapes actually are. Taking his two previous films into account, Suzume feels like the final part of a trilogy that Shinkai has been working on for over the last decade. They all have a coming-of-age storyline, include supernatural elements, and have a back and forth between the countryside of Japan and the life in a metropolis as a central characteristic of their film. And yet, Suzume is different than his previous two works.
A powerful earthquake triggered tsunami that swept through the facility.
Saturday marks 12 years since the massive earthquake and tsunami triggered a nuclear accident that
tonight,
devastated
nuclear
northeastern
officials
Japan.
there are warning of a possible nuclear reactor meltdown.
Well, this could be a Chernobyl in the making.
Another aspect that I haven't mentioned but that is a common thread for his latest films is its focus on the environment. Makoto Shinkai repeatedly stated in interviews that recent earthquakes and climate change have been aspects that concerned him deeply. And if you look a bit closer, all three films center around this topic in some way. Your Name has been about a deadly meteor, Weathering with You about climate change and rising sea levels, and Suzume deals with the constant threat of earthquakes destroying the country. The only difference to his two previous films is that now he addresses these issues up front. You can watch Your Name as a gender-swapping, time-traveling romance or lose yourself in the beautifully portrayed Tokyo of Weathering with You without noticing the environmental undertones. But in this film, earthquakes are an openly stated threat. Shinkai is a master of talking about themes that seem enormous, like the threat of climate change, able to compress it into an entertaining piece of art that, if we not pay attention to it, simply enjoy it for what it is. An entertaining piece of art. In older interviews, Shinkai stated that his films shouldn't be perceived as political messages, but rather as films that you are able to watch and enjoy regardless. But watching Suzume feels like Shinkai gave us a glimpse into his personal life. I will not go into details for those of you who haven't seen the film, but at one point Suzume mentions that it is just a matter of luck if one is alive or not. And this feels like Shinkai himself saying it, knowing that no matter where he lives in Japan, the threat of an earthquake and the devastating consequences are ever so present. Whereas in Your Name and Weathering with You, the threat that lures behind a meteor or rising sea levels is used as a device in the film, a vague force for conflict. Here, earthquakes are the real antagonists. Which brings me to Daijin, the small cat that is portrayed as the film's enemy and probably one of the aspects I wasn't the biggest fan of. It is Suzume's inner struggle of overcoming her trauma, her loss, that is central to the film, and personally, Daijin was not able to deliver this emotional backdrop. However, that and some minor pacing issues were the only things that bothered me in this truly magnificent film. As with his other works, Shinkai includes Japanese folklore into the story, and, probably like no other, manages to connect the past and the present so seamlessly. At some point in the story, Suzume is lectured about an ancient force that creates these earthquakes, and in the next she has to send her mom funny emojis so that she's not mad at her. The film swings between the then and now, and shows that even many years after a tragic incident, some wounds have not healed, hearts are still broken, people are still feeling lost. Although I always had the impression that Shinkai's films are universally approachable, which I still believe is true for Suzume, that just like Your Name and Weathering with You is very much successful on the international box office, this film can be perceived very differently from many Japanese viewers who were witnessing the earthquake in 2011. I even found a video of someone who mentioned that watching the film was difficult for him, simply because he was reminded of the catastrophe, something that might be hard to connect to as a Western audience. This might sound a little weird, but although Suzume is his most serious work, I would also argue that it is Shinkai's funniest film up to date. Okay, Shinkai was never known for making really funny films, talking about unanswered love and people drifting apart, sometimes quite literally, but this one had quite some laughs in it. The most obvious, of course, being Shota the chair, that Shinkai himself included into the film to lighten up the mood. The chair's movement is in CG and a little bit clumsy, but that seemed to be intentional, arguing that it should remind audiences of the Pixar lamp. Typical for Shinkai, the rest of the cast is a pool of sympathetic characters that enrich the story. And can we please all agree on that Tomoya needs a standalone film? He was a really charming character. I really liked him. I also want to quickly mention the soundtrack by Red Wimps. Similar to his previous films, the songs of the Japanese rock band feel like home. Grand piano chords and orchestral pieces accompany Suzume on the road, and the ending song will probably land on any Spotify playlist long after you've watched the film. But this time they switched up the soundtrack a little bit, even having a jazzy tune in a chase sequence that reminded me of Cowboy Bebop and is now on repeat on my phone. Red Wimps and Makoto Shinkai continues to be a musical love story that hopefully will have a sequel for every new project he tackles in the future. We all have this one anime that speaks to us, a show or a film that, no matter what other people think about it, was perfect to us. The experience we connect with this piece of art will always be there. And well, for me, that was Kimi no Nawa, or Your Name. I remember the exact day when I walked into a packed theater 6 years ago and a friend telling me all about his experiences of seeing it in Tokyo at a premiere a couple of months ago. I remember the laughs, the cries, and how I felt when the credits rolled. But what I remember the most was how people were able to connect with Mitsuha and Taki. As much as Your Name, Weathering with You and Suzume have been about colossal tragedies and the fate of the past, present and future of Japan, at their core, they are about the way we connect with other people, the deep connections we have with each other, no matter how far away we are from one another or if we are still there. The full title of the film is Suzume no Tojimari, which can be translated into Suzume's door shutting. But as much as this film is about closing doors, it is also about opening new ones. And I feel like with this one, Shinkai opened the door for us, giving us the chance to deeper connect with his work. No matter if you want to see a deeper meaning behind his films or just enjoy them as they are, they remain extraordinary, being able to speak to our hearts. And despite being a different Shinkai film, I feel like Suzume is no exception. So, what did you think about the film? Have you seen Suzume in theaters? And what is your favorite Makoto Shinkai film? Please let me know in the comments down below. It is my deepest wish to share my passion for anime and manga with this world, so if you like this video and subscribe to the channel, you can help me get closer to that goal. Thank you. Over here, you can check out Why Tomo-chan is a Girl. It's actually a really funny comedy and deeper than you think. My name is Leon, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.